Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you with us for our fifth edition of R&R, I believe. This time when we recommend a book or a song or a film that we've seen and bring out things that are special to us from that. So I'm Jill.
And I'm Phil.
And together we are Jill.
We were on a bit of a streak.
We got it wrong. Let's do it again. And together we are
Phil.
And Jill. Yeah, okay. I think I did it wrong. Anyway, after so many months, really, of working together. So, anyway, I'm excited about what we've got for you this morning. And we're going to begin by Phil bringing a book to us. Phil, would you like to share your book?
So my book is Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. And I bring this to you partly because my Shard Lake recommendation went down quite well last time but one. So I did read the book, but again, for reasons of space, I no longer own the book. But I do have the audio book of it. So I was going to read you the back of the audiobook, just to give you a sense of what it's about. Set in the turbulent times of 12th century England, when civil war, famine, religious strife, and battles over royal succession tore lives and families apart. The Pillars of the Earth tells the story of the building of a magnificent cathedral against this richly imagined backdrop filled with intrigue and treachery. As that said, it's a story about the building of a cathedral in this fictional Kingsbridge, and it's a long book and it covers like a whole lifetime. So the generation that start building it is not necessarily the same generation that finishes building it. And I just think I really enjoyed it. I like a historical book, but also as a Christian reading it. Actually, this vocation that Tom Builder, the guy at the beginning of the book, has to build a cathedral was quite inspiring from a sense of vocation and calling to the building trade and to build a cathedral. But there's also this one particular scene that really struck me, which I'd like to chat a little bit about this morning. So, as I said, the book is about the building of a cathedral, and there's all this political wrangling going on. So the priory, the monks, have managed to secure the land and the stone that they need to build the cathedral. But unfortunately, the Earl, who's not their friend, owns the mine. So they have the right to have the stone, but they don't own the mine to get to it. So there's a big standoff between the stone is theirs, but they're not allowed in. And it's late at night, and the monks just get out. They each light a candle and hold a Bible, and they form this little circle around the mine, and they just pray really loudly, where the kind of mischievous, evil Earl and his men just kind of get freaked out and let them have the stone. And it's a really powerful scene to think about. Actually, these men of God just standing there with a candle and the Bible, and that being enough to intimidate the power and the authority of the local Earl into giving them what they want, which is the stone to build the cathedral to glorify God. So my slightly ham-fisted attempt to shoehorn some spirituality into this is it just reminds me of the book of Esther, where Esther has to go to the king to plead on behalf of the Jews, and there's the danger that she might die by taking this liberty. And she says, "If I die, I die." And that's the kind of parallel that I see in the book of Esther and that particular scene in the Pillars of the Earth.
Oh, that's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, because she was born for such a time as this, wasn't she? And she saved the Jewish people. So when she approached the king, nobody was allowed to approach the king, but he rather favoured her, didn't he? So he had a soft spot for Esther. Whereas I expect the Duke didn't have much of a soft spot for the monks. But I think that powerful presence of a group of men, like you say, praying with a candle and a Bible, is amazing, really. Yeah, you can sort of imagine it. And who would dare to confront them, really?
And it's the beautiful gentleness of it, which I think you also get in Esther. Like there's lots of battles and killing and things in Pillars of the Earth, but there's just this moment of gentleness that really feels like a victory. And similarly, I suppose you could look at the Old Testament, and there's a lot of battles in the Old Testament, and Israel goes to war an awful lot, but actually in Esther you have this important character who saves the Jewish nation by doing something as gentle as putting on a meal for a king and asking him very nicely to do something. So I think we can get into a mindset that I need to do something dramatic or violent or whatever, but actually sometimes the heroic thing is actually to be quiet and to be still and to just rest in what.
Although I can't help thinking while you're talking of when Trump, went out and held the Bible up and he gassed people, the protesters, so that he could do that outside a church that he never worshipped at, and they weren't really very appreciative of him doing that. And he just stood there with the Bible. And of course, some Christians would have said, "Oh yeah, good, great, Donald," and other Christians would have just thought, "This is anathema." He doesn't really stand for anything that we see that's in the Bible. But that, and who knows what he thought he was doing? But and of course, I don't want to take it off track, but it just reminded me of that, although in a very different setting. And one that didn't bring peace and didn't bring people into an awe of God.
But I suppose the difference there is you've got someone who has the power trying to look gentle and peaceful, whereas in the other two you have someone that didn't have the power, but their gentleness did the work.
Okay. Phil, can I ask you, what is your habit? When do you read these great big long books?
To be honest with you, at theology college.
Okay, because I was thinking you've got a family, you're a full-time curate. When do you get a chance to read them?
It was summer holidays when theology college have quite long summer holidays. So
okay, now yes. I understand.
So yeah, don't worry. It's not that you're not giving me enough work to do.
Okay, well that's cleared that up then. Okay, so The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. Okay. So do you want me to give my film now?
Yes, I would. I'd very much like that.
Well, coincidentally, although there's no such thing as coincidence, my film is The Dig, which is also to do with Earth. And some of you may have seen it on Netflix. It's a 2021 film. I didn't know it was recently released. I'm just flicking through Netflix and I saw it and I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. I didn't know anything about it, so I watched it just this weekend. And it's a beautiful film. It's based on a true story. I'll just read what Netflix says about it, just as an introduction. On the eve of World War II, a British widow hires a self-taught archaeologist to dig up mysterious formations on her land, leading to a staggering find. So I thought, yeah, I'll have a go at this. And then the first scene is Ralph Fiennes on a boat crossing over with a ferry, sort of with his bicycle, and he cycles up to the big house and they negotiate a deal which he nearly walks away from because she's only going to pay him £1, 15 shillings and sixpence, and he wants £2 a week to be paid to excavate these big burial mounds on her ground, which she and her husband, when they first bought where they're living and had the land in it, they planned to dig it up themselves. So she is interested in archaeology. Anyway, he's a sort of simple, he comes across as this simple bloke, with his trilby hat and his bicycle, and he talks, he's dour. and he doesn't like to think of himself as an archaeologist. He says he's an excavator, and he's not trained. Anyway, she fights his cause because the local archaeological people want him on a project that they're doing. And then, well, so he starts digging, and in the end, of course, he finds, you know, I don't think it's a spoiler. Is it a spoiler? Maybe I shouldn't tell you what he finds. Anyway, suffice to say, I have seen what he has found, and I believe you have as well, Phil. And it is a truly amazing Anglo-Saxon find. So I'll leave it with you there. Anyway, there are two parts. It's by no means a moral story. It's a very beautifully filmed, gorgeous film to watch. And the character parts are really characters. Anyway, Peggy Piggott, that's the name of the widow. She's played by Lily James, and Ralph is Basil Brown, I think, who's the excavator. And Lily has a young son who's about 9, I think 9 or 10. And when her husband died, there's this scene quite late on in the film, because the boy and the excavator, Basil, have got quite close, and Basil's interested in astronomy as well, and he's sort of helped the lad understand the stars, etc., etc. And he's a very clever man, as it happens. Anyway, there's lots of very good bits, really cameo bits about characters and relationships. And anyway, they develop quite a strong bond. And Peggy is dying. She's got a stomach ulcer, and she's not at all well. So not only has she only lost her husband, but, you know, this ancient world that they are digging up, it sort of raises some philosophical questions. And then there's other diggers as well who have their own relationships. So there's a married couple who are going through a big difficulty. There's all sorts of other things happening. Anyway, this particular night, the mum is really not at all well, and she goes to her bedroom and she can almost hardly breathe, and her son sort of spies on her, and then he rushes outside into the dark, and Basil is around, and he comes across to him, and the boy says, you know, when my father died, everybody told me that I had to look after my mum, and I'm a failure, I failed. And Basil just looks at him, and you really don't know what he's going to say. And I wrote it down because I thought he would say, you haven't failed. No one's expecting you to, you know, to do the impossible. You know, there's no, but what he says this: we all fail every day. Some things we just can't succeed at, no matter how hard we try. I know that's not what you want to hear. And the boy just looks at him and he says, I'm stronger than she thinks I am. And he says, I know, perhaps you can show her. And it's so beautifully tender. But it's just such a surprise that he doesn't take away the boy's pain. He actually adds to it. And he says, yeah, we all fail every day. That's what he says. And it just, it gets my heart. And it also, because it's a real understanding of what humanity is really. And I suppose if I wanted to be super spiritual, there's this passage in Philippians where the Apostle Paul's talking, and he's talking about how somehow he's going to attain the resurrection from the dead. And then he says, not that I've already obtained this or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on for that, to take hold of that for which Christ took hold of me. I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. And that's the thing. And for that little boy to have learnt that, you know, perfection or never failing, that's not the point of life. You know, we do. I mean, do we all fail every day? I don't know. That seemed quite a harsh thing to say, but actually, in the big light and canvas of our lives, yes, we do. We never live up to the standards we set for ourselves, let alone what we were created for. So there was that part, and then there's another part when, after they've discovered what they've discovered, there's a garden party and all the press are there, and there's lots of people from the village there, and the widow, she's put into a car, and Basil gets into the car with her. He has a wife who's following on separately. Anyway, they're in the car and she's sort of crying her eyes out, and she says, what does she say? Because she knows she's facing her death. We die, we decay, we don't live on. And he just sits there quietly, and then he says gently to her, I'm not sure I agree. He says like that. And then he says this, from the first human handprint in a cave wall, we are part of something continuous, so we don't really die. From the first human handprint on a cave wall, we are part of something continuous, so we don't really die. But he says it in his accent. And again, that sort of touched me. And part of me says it's a real humanist film. You know, God doesn't get a look in. However, with me reviewing it, God is going to get a look in. And I was reminded of the bit in Hebrews, it's Hebrews 11, where he's talking about all the ancients of the faith, and they lived by faith. They couldn't see, and yet they lived by faith. And then we get to Hebrews 12, which says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy that was set before him, he enjoyed the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Sorry, that's not quite the bit. It's about being surrounded by all these a great cloud of witnesses. It is that bit. So, you know, the idea that we are part of something bigger, I think that we have to hang on to that, you know, that our lives do have meaning, they're really important, and that we are contributing to, I don't know, something that is just so much bigger than ourselves. And in God's economy, it really matters, you know. I love that. And I love the way, you know, speaking as someone who delves into history and the past and all that, and he says, you know, the moment that handprint went on the cave, you know, we're part of something that's simultaneous. And it's, yeah, I just think through the generations, it's just profound. Anyway, I would recommend everyone to watch it. It's very gentle. There's no bad language. It's a beautiful story. There are relationship bits in it. So there are some scenes of a mildly sexual nature. But I think it's just a lovely, pleasing film to watch. And it is based on a true story. So we can't say, Basil Brown, apparently he wasn't commended at all for his work. And it's only recently that they've discovered that he was the main one who did the digging.
I'm going to draw it back to Pillars of the Earth now, because there is a nice little link within what you were saying just now, because actually Pillars of the Earth is part of a trilogy. But so you get this this story of this cathedral over multiple generations, and each is adding to the cathedral, and it's looking more beautiful, and it's this kind of culminative thing, which I think links with what Basil was saying about the handprints. So I guess the difference between the kind of the humanistic view of the bigger picture is that there's this humanistic, actually humanity is evolving, and in humanity is the ultimate goal, to saying actually, look, God is the ultimate goal, and the church, his people are growing and thriving, and the gospel's expanding, and we're part of that. So I think it's fascinating to think that whether you believe in God or not, there's a sense inside you, this need to know that you are part of something bigger, and something is happening.
And I wish I'd grasped that before my mum died, because I remember her saying to me, Gilly, I've come to the conclusion that when you're gone, your life goes with you. And, you know, that really sort of hurt me and resonated with me. I think as we get older, we do realise that, because there are past memories and experiences we've had. Unless we share them with others, nobody knows about them. You're the only one. And, you know, because we live such fragmented lives, and families are separated, and communities, you know, are not as stable as they used to be in the good old days, you know, but that sense of I don't matter. And Mum, don't talk nonsense, you know, look at your heritage. That's what I said. But they're profound questions, aren't they, that we all ask ourselves now and again. Yeah. So anyway, let's move on. And you've got a song and band for us.
Band, yes. So this is a band called the Sons of Korra. And if you like reading the Psalms, you might have noticed when you look at the Psalms, some of them say by the Sons of Korra. So this is not the original Sons of Korra. They're not producing music anymore. But there's an Australian group of musicians who call themselves the Sons of Korra. And what they do is they take the Psalms, different Psalms, and they try and set them to kind of modern arrangements. And the idea is you listen to it and you're taken into the Psalm, and they use modern music styles, but they try and convey the same meaning. So it's a really interesting and fascinating way of coming at the Psalms in I think quite a powerful way. It makes these ancient songs that were written thousands of years ago and have been preserved by the church for thousands of years into something that could be being played by a modern secular band. It's the same words, but it just feels bang up to date because of the setting of it. So what I've been doing a lot recently in my kind of personal quiet time is I've been particularly looking at Psalm 139. There's an arrangement of Psalm 139 which they have called Still With You. So I put it on and I read along in my Bible, and the words are slightly different. They've translated it as they've translated it, and maybe some of the translation was done with a view to making the words fit the tune. But that experience of listening to the Psalms sung in a contemporary way, reading along, seeing where words are translated slightly differently, it really takes you into the heart of the Psalm in a way that I've not previously.
Yeah, fantastic. I know someone else who really likes the Sons of Korra. And the Psalms are just such a wonderful expression of who we are as human beings, aren't they? There's happy ones, there's praiseful ones, worshipful ones, and there's some desperate ones, aren't they? Which show that they understand the depths of our, I don't know what the word is, emotions. You know, if you're depressed, there's some fantastic Psalms which express exactly, you know, where you're coming from. But some of them are a bit difficult to cope with, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, and I don't think they've done all 150 yet. So
right, okay.
It might be some of the ones you're thinking of haven't been done.
No. And there's some very short and simple ones which are wonderful. I knew someone who spent a whole month just meditating. Oh, I can't remember which psalm it was, but it was a 4-verse psalm. A whole month, every morning she read it and got more from it. Yeah.
If you can't find Sons of Korra, there's always Boney M by the Rivers of Babylon.
Well, it's funny you said that, because when I was thinking about the songs, I was thinking, well, you know, Boney M always gets me singing along when I'm doing the washing up in the kitchen. There's the Rivers of Babylon, and when Jesus was born, what's that one?
Mary's Boy Child.
Yeah, I just love them. I mean, they are cheesy and they would really grate on you long term, but you know, yeah.
The thing that makes me smile about Rivers of Babylon in your context of the difficult ones, next time you listen to it, read along, and it's quite striking the verse they chose to miss out.
Okay.
Which I can see why, because it wouldn't have made it into the charts if they'd left the verse in that.
I'll have a look. Oh, okay. Are we done? Did you want to say more about the Sons of Korra?
Just check them out. I did have a little look on Amazon. They, I wouldn't buy their CDs. It sort of starts at 200 and something pounds. So I'd stick to YouTube. They are on Spotify as well. So I'd stick to digital.
CDs so expensive.
I guess they must have been quite a limited production of them. So they're probably quite rare. That must be why.
You could buy CDs that expensive, you know.
Yeah, well, I think you need to go to the kind of second-hand market, which is, I think it's supply and demand, and I think supply is quite short.
Okay. Well, so I hope you have a good weekend. Hope you will have a lovely Saturday. It's been great being with you this morning. God bless and take care, and bye from me.
And it's bye from me.